The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Explosions ripped the ground apart, sending shards of alien metal and earth into the smoky sky. Fires burned everywhere, casting orange and red light across the cratered landscape. Amid the deafening roar of laser fire and the screams of the wounded, Dr. Alex Rourke moved with calm precision. His uniform was streaked with blood, his hands coated in grime, but his eyes were sharp, scanning for those who needed him most. Soldiers of every type, human and allied, were falling around him, yet he treated each wound as if it were the most important in the universe. To Alex, every life was worth saving. He knelt beside a young corporal whose leg had been shattered by an alien projectile. "Hold still," he said, his voice steady. The corporal whimpered, eyes wide with pain and fear, but Alex's touch was confident. With practiced skill, he stabilized the leg, packed the wound with synthetic tissue gel and bandaged it tightly. When he finished, he gave the soldier a reassuring nod. "You're going to live," he said. The boy blinked, barely able to speak, but nodded in understanding. Alex stood and moved on, dodging another volley of laser fire that sizzled past him. He had seen death more times than he could count, yet it never became normal. There was something about being on a warfield, surrounded by life and death in such raw clarity, that made him feel both powerful and helpless at the same time. Then, in the chaos of a collapsing structure, someone shouted in alarm. "Doctor! We've got... It's huge!" Alex turned to see a stretcher being carried toward the makeshift field hospital. He froze for a moment. The creature on the stretcher was massive, larger than any Xylaris he had ever seen. Its body was covered in iridescent scales that shimmered with color even under the harsh hospital lights. Multiple limbs writhed slightly, as if searching for balance or ready to strike. The head was elongated, crowned with a set of bioluminescent spines that glowed faintly. Even injured, it radiated authority. "Get it inside," a sergeant shouted nervously. It's one of theirs. A queen, I think?" Alex's heart skipped. A queen? That meant this was no ordinary alien soldier. This was a leader, possibly the one directing the attacks on human outposts. The implications were immense. If she survived, she could coordinate a counterattack. If she died, the Xylaris might retaliate with even greater fury. But Alex's instincts overrode fear. He stepped forward.
"I'll treat her," he said firmly. "We have to save her life."
The soldiers hesitated. "Are you insane?" "It's the enemy queen," one of them shouted. "I'm a doctor," Alex replied, voice calm but resolute. Coughing bit Shadby at a time. "I don't choose sides when someone's dying. Bring her in." With great effort, the stretcher was moved into the tent. The alien queen hissed softly, a sound that made even seasoned soldiers flinch. Her eyes, large, multifaceted, yet expressive, watched Alex as he approached. Despite her size and obvious strength, she did not lash out. She seemed curious or cautious. Alex crouched beside her, studying her wounds. Deep gashes ran across her limbs and chest, likely from human plasma rifles. Small burns dotted her scales, and one of her spines was fractured. He could see the life force flickering beneath her exoskeleton, a fragile thread that needed careful tending. He spoke softly, almost to himself, as he prepared his tools. "You're going to be okay. Just stay still."
"I promise I won't hurt you."
The queen tilted her head, observing him. Alex realized she understood the tone, if not the words. He began cleaning a deep gash along her chest, carefully removing debris without causing further injury. She flinched slightly but did not move away. Her trust, or her curiosity, was growing. When he finished, he applied a regenerative gel that would stabilize her wounds and prevent infection. Finally, he leaned back slightly and offered his name, as was customary. I'm Dr. Alex Rourke. I'll take care of you. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the queen froze. Her limbs stiffened, her spines lit with a brighter glow, and her eyes widened in a way that seemed impossible. A sound, soft and trembling, escaped her mouth. A single word in her alien tongue. It wasn't loud, but in the tense silence of the tent, it carried. It was almost like a whisper of recognition. Almost like a name. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He repeated cautiously, "I'm Alex. My name is Alex Rourke." She shifted slightly, not in aggression, but as if trying to understand. Her gaze locked on him. The soldiers who had come to help now watched with wide eyes, unsure whether to step back or intervene. Alex took a slow breath. Something about this reaction was deeply personal. He had seen fear, pain, rage, and submission in countless beings, but nothing like this. The queen was frozen, utterly still, except for her eyes that seemed to pierce into his very memory. He tried to think. Had he ever encountered a Xylaris queen before? No. He had been on the front lines, but never faced a leader directly. And yet, she knew his name. "Why, do you know me?" he whispered, almost to himself. He felt absurd speaking to a creature whose language he barely understood. Yet somehow, a connection sparked between them. The queen's body remained tense, but a subtle shift suggested she was listening. Minutes passed. The queen's breathing, if one could call it that, was measured but shaky. Alex examined her more carefully, noticing small scars along her neck and head. She had been in countless battles before this one and survived many. There was history written on her body. As he worked, Alex's mind raced. Could it be possible that she had encountered someone in his family line? Or perhaps some ancient record or prophecy had marked his name. He didn't know, but he had no time to dwell. He needed to ensure she survived. The soldiers began whispering among themselves. "Should we restrain her?" one asked nervously. "No," Alex said firmly. "She's hurt. She can't fight. Don't make her an enemy when she's already dying." The queen's head moved slightly, a gesture almost human in its subtlety. Alex interpreted it as acknowledgement. Perhaps she understood him. Perhaps she trusted him in some way beyond instinct. By now, the tent was quiet except for the hum of medical equipment and the occasional groan from wounded soldiers. Alex applied a final layer of regenerative gel, checked her vital signs, and adjusted the monitoring devices. She was stable, for now. And then, just as he stood up, the queen did something unexpected. She extended a limb, touching lightly against his arm. It was a gesture of connection, or perhaps recognition. Alex froze. Her eyes met his once more, bright and shimmering with an emotion he could not name. She made another sound, low and deliberate this time, almost like a word he should understand, but could not. His stomach knotted with curiosity and unease. This was no ordinary battlefield encounter. Something far larger was at play, and somehow he was at the center. The sergeant who had brought her in whispered, "Sir, now."
"What now?"
Alex looked down at the alien queen, alive but wary. "Now," he said, "we survive, and we find out why she knows my name." Outside, the battle raged on, a distant storm of fire and fury. Inside the tent, two unlikely beings, human and alien queen, held a fragile connection in the midst of war. It was the beginning of something neither could yet understand, a bond that could change the course of the conflict, and perhaps the future of both their species. Alex glanced at the monitors, then back at the queen. Her breathing was slow, measured, but her eyes never left him. and in that gaze he saw curiosity, intelligence, and perhaps something more, something that might lead to understanding, or danger beyond imagining. He adjusted his equipment and prepared for the next stage, keeping her alive, learning her secrets, and navigating the uncertain path ahead. War had brought them together, but it would be trust, courage, and humanity that determined what happened next. And as he watched her, frozen in recognition, Alex could not shake the thought that somewhere, somehow, this encounter had been written long before either of them had set foot on the battlefield. The war would rage, allies and enemies would fall, but in this tent, in this moment, humanity had reached out and touched something far beyond itself. The tent was quiet now, the chaos of the battlefield fading into a distant roar. Alex stood over the alien queen, watching her carefully. Her breathing was steady, yet something about her gaze unsettled him. She wasn't like the other Xylaris soldiers he had faced. There was intelligence in her eyes, an understanding of the world around her that was far beyond normal. Alex moved closer, kneeling beside her again. "Can you understand me?" he asked, speaking slowly, enunciating each word. The queen's eyes blinked, a small, deliberate gesture. It was the closest thing to a yes that he had ever received from an alien. He exhaled. This was a breakthrough. "I need to know why you froze when I said my name," he continued. Do you know me?" The queen's limbs twitched slightly, a motion that reminded Alex of a delicate balance beam. She opened her mouth, revealing rows of sharp, glimmering teeth, but instead of a hiss or growl, a soft sound emerged, a sound he could not understand. He leaned in closer, listening. Her words were deliberate, careful, as if she were testing him. He shook his head, frustrated. "I don't understand. You'll have to try again." Then, with surprising speed, she extended one of her long limbs toward a small device Alex had set up to monitor her vitals. She tapped it lightly, and a screen flickered to life, displaying symbols he had never seen before. Alex squinted at it. The symbols seemed like a language, but not just letters. They were patterns, shapes, and colors combined. He realized with a thrill that she was trying to communicate. She wasn't just a wounded soldier. She was reasoning, thinking, adapting. Humans had faced alien intelligence before, but this was different. This was a mind at the height of its species, trapped and injured, yet refusing to submit. Alex adjusted the device. "I think we can try to talk," he said, more to himself than anyone else. He typed slowly, matching patterns to sounds. The queen watched, her eyes following his every movement. Then, in a way that made his heart pound, she touched the screen herself, arranging patterns in response. Slowly, a rudimentary form of communication began. "My name is Alex," he typed, careful. "Do you know me?" The queen paused, then made a sound that resembled the human syllables of his name, stretched and modulated in a way that sent shivers down his spine. She froze again, but this time it seemed different. Less shock, more recognition. Alex's mind raced. Why would a Xylaris queen know him? He had never seen her before, never traveled outside human space in a way that would intersect with hers. And yet, here she was, reacting as though he had been part of her life in some critical way. He leaned back, thinking maybe it was a prophecy, he considered. Or perhaps some ancient Xylaris record had documented humans, and somehow his name had been noted. The thought was absurd, yet the queen's reaction made it impossible to ignore. "Whatever the reason," he muttered, "we'll figure it out together." The queen's eyes flickered, a subtle change, almost like an acknowledgement. Alex felt a flicker of hope. If she could recognize him, if she could respond, then perhaps she could be reasoned with. Perhaps she could help end the war. Outside the tent, the sounds of battle continued, but Alex felt a strange calm, He began checking her wounds more carefully, adjusting the regenerative gel, cleaning the burns. Every movement was deliberate, careful, and precise. The Queen did not resist. She allowed him to work, watching him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. As he worked, Alex's mind wandered. He thought about his family, about his mentors, about the countless hours he had spent learning medicine, anatomy, and battlefield survival. Every skill he had acquired led to this moment. Every choice he had made in his life had prepared him to be here, tending to the most dangerous creature he had ever faced. Hours passed. The tent grew quiet except for the hum of medical devices and the occasional crackle of the communications system. The Queen's breathing remained steady, and she no longer flinched at his touch. Alex realized that the initial shock had passed. She had accepted him in some way. Not as a friend, perhaps, but as someone she could tolerate. Someone she could trust to keep her alive. Then, without warning, she made a new gesture. One of her limbs extended toward a small holographic map on a table. She traced a path across the alien terrain, stopping at key points. Alex leaned in, recognizing some of the landmarks. These were locations of recent battles, but also areas of strategic importance. His heart raced. She was trying to tell him something. She was giving him information, intelligence that could save lives, maybe even end the war. Alex swallowed hard. "You're giving me your strategy," he said. "You're helping us?" The Queen's eyes narrowed, then she tilted her head slightly. It was the closest thing to a yes she had given yet. Alex's mind whirled. This was unprecedented. A human and a Xylaris queen collaborating on the battlefield. He felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. Every decision he made from this moment on could change the course of the war. He typed slowly on the device. "If I help you, will you help us?" The Queen paused, then tapped the screen. Symbols formed a pattern that Alex understood as an agreement. It was not spoken, but it was clear. She would cooperate under certain conditions. Alex realized that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Humanity was proving its value not just through firepower, but through intelligence, courage, and empathy. If he could maintain this fragile connection, they might have a chance to end the conflict before it escalated further. The sergeant who had been watching quietly spoke up. "Doctor, what is happening? Why is she helping us?" Alex looked up, his expression serious. "Because she knows I won't hurt her. And because humans can surprise even the strongest species." The Queen shifted slightly, a subtle movement that reminded Alex of a cat assessing a new environment. She was studying him, evaluating his intentions. He met her gaze steadily, refusing to flinch. For the first time, he allowed himself a thought that had seemed impossible during the chaos of battle. Maybe this war didn't have to be endless. Maybe humans and Xylaris could find common ground if someone brave enough reached out first. He glanced at the battlefield outside the tent. Explosions still shook the ground, and distant cries reminded him that the fight was far from over. But here, in this small, fragile moment, a bridge had been formed. One human, armed with skill, courage, and compassion, had earned the attention of the most powerful Xylaris alive. Alex returned to his work, cleaning minor burns and adjusting bandages. The Queen's attention never left him. Occasionally, she made small gestures toward the device, providing information about her forces, their movements, and weak points. Alex took notes, careful not to misinterpret anything. Every symbol, every gesture could hold critical meaning. As night fell over the battlefield, the tent glowed with the soft light of medical instruments and holographic screens. The world outside was chaos, but inside, something extraordinary was happening. A human and an alien queen were communicating, learning to understand each other, and perhaps beginning to trust. Alex felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He had always believed in the value of life and the importance of helping others, no matter the cost. But now, he realized that humanity's potential went far beyond what he had imagined. Through intelligence, empathy, and courage, humans could influence even the most alien and powerful species. He looked at the Queen once more. Her eyes met his, bright and shimmering in the soft light. She was wounded, yes, but she was alive, and she was willing to cooperate. Alex allowed himself a small, cautious hope. The battle was far from over. Both human and Xylarus forces would continue to fight, and danger lurked in every shadow. But in that tent, for that brief moment, a new possibility had emerged. Humanity had reached out, and the universe had noticed. And Alex knew, deep in his bones, that this was only the beginning. The Queen had recognized him for a reason he did not yet understand. Whatever it was, it would change the course of the war, and perhaps the future of both their species. Outside, the battlefield roared, but inside, a fragile bond had been formed. One human doctor, armed with nothing but skill, courage, and determination, had begun to write a new chapter in the history of the galaxy, and for the first time, Alex allowed himself to believe that the impossible might be within reach. The night was restless. Outside the tent, the battlefield simmered with the occasional flare of distant explosions, punctuated by the eerie hum of alien engines. Inside, Alex monitored the Queen, whose massive form rested on the reinforced medical bed. Her breathing was steady, but he knew that stability was fragile. One wrong move, one misstep, and she could collapse. Or worse, the camp could be attacked while she was vulnerable. Alex ran his hands over her scales again, checking the injuries. She had begun to respond more to him now. Small gestures and subtle movements that hinted at recognition, maybe even trust. He felt a strange connection, a shared purpose forming between them. Somehow his presence had calmed her, or perhaps reminded her of something long forgotten. "Doctor!" the sergeant whispered, breaking the silence. "I don't like leaving her here. What if they come back for her?" Alex didn't look up immediately. "Then we'll make sure she survives," he said firmly. "No one is getting her tonight." The sergeant nodded, though unease was clear in his eyes. Humans had fought Xylarus countless times, but never had they been in a position like this, protecting the enemy's queen. The responsibility weighed heavily on Alex, yet he embraced it. His skills, his courage, his ingenuity, these were all tools in this unprecedented moment. Suddenly, the tent flaps shook violently. A series of explosions hit close by, sending tremors through the ground. Alarms blared. "Incoming!" someone shouted. The sound of Xylarus troops charging erupted outside, and distant screams reached their ears. The camp was under attack. Alex's heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. "Sergeant, lock down the perimeter. Get the wounded out of here! We hold this position!" He turned to the Queen. Her eyes were wide, limbs tensed, but there was no panic, only alertness. It was as if she understood the danger and was ready to react, despite her injuries. Alex realized she was assessing him, gauging whether he would falter. He had no choice. He could not fail, not now, not ever. "Stay with me," he said, moving to help her up. The Queen shifted slightly, allowing him to assist her. Her limbs were heavy, her movements awkward due to the injuries, but she trusted him enough to follow his lead. Outside, the battle raged. Laser fire cut through the darkness, illuminating jagged terrain and cratered ground. Explosions sent clouds of dust and debris into the air. Human soldiers fought desperately to hold the perimeter, but the Xylarus forces were organized, precise, and relentless. Alex carried her toward a hidden exit, a secondary tunnel he had identified earlier during reconnaissance. Her size made the movement difficult, but he adjusted his grip carefully, mindful of her wounds. The Queen's presence was intimidating even when she was weakened. Soldiers who saw them pass whispered among themselves, some in fear, others in awe. This was no ordinary creature. They were witnessing history in motion. As they moved, Alex's mind raced. He needed a plan. The Queen had information. Strategic knowledge that could shift the tide of this conflict. But it had to be shared safely. He couldn't let the attackers breach the tent before they reached a secure location. A sudden explosion nearby threw them to the ground. Dust and shards of metal rained down. Alex pressed his hand against the Queen to steady her. "Hold on!" he shouted. The Queen's limbs flexed, gripping instinctively, but she did not panic. Her eyes remained on him, sharp and calculating, trusting his judgment. When the dust settled, Alex realized they had to move faster. He guided her through the winding tunnel, avoiding crumbling walls and unstable debris. At one point, he had to lift her over a fallen beam, and her massive weight nearly pulled him off balance. Yet he persisted, every muscle straining, every thought focused on survival. They emerged into a clearing outside the main camp, the night sky above dotted with stars. The sounds of battle were still audible, but here they had a momentary reprieve. Alex lowered the Queen gently onto the ground, scanning the surroundings. "Are you okay?" he asked, breathless. The Queen blinked slowly, then extended a limb to touch his shoulder lightly. It was acknowledgement, a subtle gesture that conveyed gratitude and recognition. Alex allowed himself a small sigh of relief. But there was no time to rest. He'd learned enough from her gestures and the patterns on her device to understand that she had information critical to human survival. They needed to share it with command, but the route was dangerous. Xylaris forces could return at any moment. Alex decided on a bold plan. Using the Queen's knowledge, they could set traps for the enemy, guide the human forces to advantageous positions, and potentially turn the tide of the battle. It was risky, but he had no choice. He had to act. He activated a portable communication device, signaling the nearby command unit. "This is Dr. Rourke," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "I have high-value intelligence. I need a secure extraction point immediately." A voice crackled in response. "Dr. Rourke, status?" "Are you with the Queen?" "Yes," he replied. "And we're moving now." "Prepare support. This information is critical to survival." He turned to the Queen. Using the device, he began to relay positions and strategies. She responded with gestures, pointing toward enemy formations, indicating their strengths and weaknesses. The more they communicated, the clearer it became. Her cooperation could change the course of the war. Minutes stretched into tense hours as they navigated the terrain. Alex kept one hand on the Queen, guiding her through treacherous ground, while using the other to relay critical tactical information. The Queen's cooperation was precise, her instincts sharp, even in her weakened state. Together they formed an unlikely alliance. Human ingenuity paired with alien intelligence. Suddenly, a squad of Xylaris ambushers appeared on a ridge above them. Alex froze for a split second, calculating. They were outnumbered and vulnerable. He had no weapons that could effectively counter the ambush in their current position. The Queen moved instinctively, her massive form rising to full height. She emitted a deep, resonant sound, a warning, a signal, and a threat, all at once. The attackers hesitated, startled by the power she radiated, even while injured. Alex realized that her presence alone could buy them critical moments. He seized the opportunity. "Follow me," he shouted, sprinting toward a narrow canyon that would limit the attackers' maneuverability. The Queen followed, her limbs powerful and precise, moving faster than he imagined she could. As they entered the canyon, Alex set up a series of makeshift traps using debris, explosives, and terrain advantages he had noted earlier. The Queen assisted in subtle ways, moving obstacles, shifting weight to trigger mechanisms at the right moment. The ambushers pursued, but the traps slowed them down, forcing them into bottlenecks.
Alex felt a surge of triumph.
Humans were resourceful, adaptable, and resilient. Even here, outnumbered and in unfamiliar territory, they could survive, and even gain the upper hand, through ingenuity and courage. The ambushers were forced to retreat, giving Alex and the Queen precious minutes to continue toward safety. They emerged from the canyon into a hidden valley, where human forces had set up a secure extraction point. Relief washed over him, but he knew the battle was far from over. He guided the Queen to a protected area, ensuring she was stable and out of immediate danger. The soldiers present looked at her in awe, whispering among themselves about the impossible scene they had witnessed. One of them finally broke the silence. "Sir, I've never seen anything like this. She followed you, and you saved her." Alex nodded, exhaustion tugging at his body. "We survived because we adapted, because we stayed calm, and because we understood each other, even without words. That's the difference humans make." The Queen shifted slightly, her gaze meeting his once more. There was recognition there, a spark that hinted at understanding beyond survival. Alex felt a deep sense of responsibility settle over him. He had not only saved a life, he had forged a bridge between species, and that bridge could change the galaxy. As night deepened, Alex reviewed the notes and data he had gathered with the Queen. Enemy positions, weak points, potential strategies. All of it could be used to protect lives and bring an end to the conflict. He realized that this was more than a battle for survival. It was a chance to show that humanity's value was not just in weapons or numbers, but in courage, intelligence, and the ability to reach across differences. The Queen remained quiet now, her massive body resting, but her presence was commanding. Alex studied her, wondering what memories had caused her to react to his name in the first place. He didn't have the answer yet, but he knew it was important. Whatever it was, it had drawn them together in this impossible moment. The first light of dawn began to streak across the valley. Alex allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. They had survived the night. They had avoided capture, and they had gained critical information that could save countless lives. But this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and the connection he had forged with the Queen could change everything. He placed a hand gently on her scaled arm. "We've made it this far," he said softly. "But the real challenge begins now, and we face it together." The Queen blinked slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was understanding there, and something more, a sense of purpose, a recognition that the future of both their species now rested in part on this fragile alliance. Alex felt the weight of that responsibility, but he did not fear it, he embraced it. Humans had always risen to challenges that seemed impossible, and here, in the shadow of war and destruction, he had proven that again. Together, human and alien Queen stood on the brink of a new possibility. The battlefield had tested them, danger had honed their instincts, and courage had guided their actions. The night had been survived, and now the dawn promised opportunity. And Alex knew deep in his heart that no matter what came next, humanity had earned a place at the table of the stars, not through domination, but through ingenuity, empathy, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The sun rose over the battered landscape, casting long shadows across the war-torn valley. Smoke and ash hung in the air, a reminder of the night's chaos. Alex stood beside the alien Queen, her massive form still recovering from her wounds, yet her presence was commanding. Soldiers moved cautiously around them, securing the area, while scouts reported that enemy forces had been slowed, but not defeated. Alex studied the Queen carefully. She had shared vital intelligence during their escape, revealing troop positions, weak points, and hidden Xylaris supply routes. With this knowledge, humanity now had an unprecedented opportunity to turn the tide of the war. But it wouldn't be easy. The enemy was formidable, disciplined, and ruthless. One wrong move could lead to catastrophe. He crouched beside her, adjusting a bandage along her limb. She watched him silently, her gaze steady, unblinking, as if she were weighing every decision he made. Alex could sense her intelligence, her centuries of experience, and the weight of leadership she carried. Despite the language barrier, he felt a strange connection. a shared understanding that went beyond words. "Today, we end this," he said softly, "but not with destruction. We do it with strategy, with courage, and with brains. But we do it the human way." The Queen made a sound, low and resonant, almost like agreement. Alex interpreted it as her willingness to cooperate fully. With her assistance, he could guide human forces to positions that would minimize casualties and maximize effectiveness. Alex moved to the holographic map, calling over a small team of officers. He pointed to key positions, using information provided by the Queen. "These are their weak points," he explained. "They'll expect a frontal assault, but we can flank them here and here. And with the Queen's insight, we can anticipate their movements. This isn't just survival. It's our chance to end the war without unnecessary bloodshed." The officers exchanged glances, unsure at first, but Alex's calm confidence and the Queen's looming presence lent weight to his words. They nodded and began mobilizing the troops according to his plan. As they moved, the Queen followed at a careful distance, her massive limbs shifting with precision. Alex noticed the soldiers glancing at her in awe and trepidation, but she did not attack. She had placed her trust in him, and now they would act together. The first engagement was tense. Human forces approached a heavily fortified Xylaris position, using the Queen's intelligence to navigate traps and ambush points. Alex coordinated from the field, his medical kit slung over his shoulder, ready to aid anyone injured. Explosions rocked the area, but the humans pressed forward with careful precision, guided by both strategy and bravery. At one point, a group of enemy soldiers attempted to flank Alex's position. He reacted instinctively, using terrain and quick thinking to create obstacles and force them back. The Queen assisted silently, moving debris and triggering minor distractions that gave humans critical advantages. It was a seamless collaboration, a demonstration of ingenuity and adaptability, human and alien working as one. Hours passed, the battle ebbing and flowing. Casualties were inevitable, but Alex's presence on the field saved many lives. His medical expertise, combined with the Queen's insight, allowed human forces to avoid major traps and anticipate enemy movements. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Finally, they reached the heart of the enemy encampment. The Xylaris leader, a massive war general, appeared, his body armored and glimmering under the sun. He roared, a sound of rage and defiance, and advanced toward Alex and the Queen. Human soldiers hesitated, fear gripping them, but Alex stepped forward without hesitation. "He will not harm us," he said, voice steady. "We can end this without more bloodshed. Stand down." The general paused, studying him, and then let out a deafening roar of challenge. The Queen stepped forward, her massive form towering over both humans and Xylaris soldiers. She hissed and displayed her spines in a warning display. The general faltered, recognizing her authority. Alex seized the moment. Using the device, he communicated quickly with the Queen, conveying a plan that relied on intimidation and strategic positioning rather than direct combat. She responded with precise movements, and together they cornered the general without further destruction. The general roared again, then slowly lowered his stance. Alex stepped closer. "We can end this war today," he said. "Not through death, but through understanding. You have power, yes, but humans have courage and brains. We can find a way to survive together." The Queen hissed softly, nudging the general toward Alex. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Submission without surrender. The general, after a tense moment, lowered his head, signaling a truce. Alex exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment. He had done it. Humans had not only survived, but had proven that courage, intelligence, and empathy could prevail, where brute force alone might fail. The battlefield quieted, and the soldiers began cautiously approaching. Relief spread through the ranks. The Queen remained beside Alex, her presence a reminder of the bridge they had built between species. The impossible alliance they had formed had achieved what many thought could not be done. As the day progressed, humans and Xylara's soldiers began negotiations, guided by Alex and the Queen. Casualties were tended to, resources were secured, and plans for mutual cooperation began to form. It was a tentative start, but a start nonetheless. Alex finally allowed himself to sit down, exhaustion weighing on him. The Queen rested beside him, her massive body a comforting presence. He looked at her, wondering about the memories that had caused her to react to his name in the first place. She had recognized him somehow before this conflict had even begun. He spoke softly. Whatever brought us together, it led us here. And maybe it's proof that humans can make a difference, even in the darkest times. The Queen tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost thoughtful. She had seen countless battles, countless lives, yet she had chosen to trust him. That trust had changed the course of history. Alex's eyes scanned the horizon. Smoke still rose from distant fires, and the battlefield bore the scars of the night's struggle. But there was hope now. Human ingenuity, courage, and compassion had prevailed, proving once again that even against superior forces, humans could adapt, survive, and thrive. He stood and looked at the Queen. "We've done more than survive," he said. "We've shown them what humans are capable of. And maybe, just maybe, we've changed the future." The Queen's eyes met his, and for the first time, Alex felt a deep sense of connection. It wasn't friendship in the way humans understood it, but something just as profound: recognition, understanding, and mutual respect. As the sun climbed higher, casting light on the valley, Alex knew that this was a turning point. The war could have continued endlessly, but through courage, intelligence, and an unwavering sense of duty, humanity had proven its worth, not just to itself, but to the universe. The Queen moved closer, her massive limbs resting gently against him. Alex could feel the weight of her presence. But it was not oppressive. It was a reminder of the possibilities they had unlocked together. In the days that followed, treaties were formed, wounded were healed, and trust was built between species that had once fought endlessly. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were respected, valued, and in many ways, admired. Alex stood on the edge of the valley, one last time, looking at the horizon. The war had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but it had also revealed the best of humanity: courage under fire, intelligence in the face of chaos, and compassion, even for those who had once been enemies. He glanced at the Queen, who watched silently from the camp's center. A silent understanding passed between them. The war had ended, but the bond they had formed would endure, a testament to what humans could achieve when they chose to rise above fear and act with wisdom and heart. Alex exhaled, a deep, steadying breath. He had survived battles before, saved countless lives, but this victory was different. It was a victory of the mind, of courage, and of humanity itself. He smiled faintly. The universe was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. But one thing was clear. Humanity had earned its place, not by dominance alone, but by proving that even in the darkest times, humans could shine brighter than the stars themselves. And as he watched the Queen prepare to return to her people, Alex knew that their story, human and Xylaris intertwined, was only just beginning.